not to be videotaping David, but just to videotape the content. But John and Jason, you guys can hear me okay, right?
Yep, can hear you well.
Awesome. Okay, so let's just jump right in here. So for all of you that are familiar with like setting up of terms, setting up of goals, the focus really should be on the positive spin on things. So a lot of times when you think of the word recession-proof, this can be kind of the concept of recession-proofing your business, recession-proofing yourself. But the idea here is that really, if you kind of put the right spin on this one, is really always advancing. That's the idea, is that we're always going to be doing things advancing to move yourself along, whether that's to improve a specific skill set, or your art at doing business, or you might be working on some of the different masteries that we've been talking about, centers of influence mastery, closing, understanding the RPT, understanding a little bit more on the premium finance side. So a lot of it's going to come through, actually the reality is going through a case, right? So the more that, I know Jason learned a ton in going through that commercial case that he had with that one recent client, and also included the premium finance on the back end. So you're going to learn a lot more by doing versus learning it in a theoretically in a book. Okay, so the idea here is to change the posturing. Just like if my goal isn't to be debt free, my goal is to have more savings. My goal isn't to lose weight. My goal is to weigh a certain weight, and that's what you want to be able to do here. So right now, the talking heads, the headlines, everything is screaming recession. The reality is that we've probably been in a recession since the pandemic. It's been propped up by government spending. And number two is we didn't really look at kind of what was going on, but you and I both know that hospitality isn't where it used to be. The restaurants aren't where it used to be. I don't know if they'll ever go back to that. Airlines aren't where they used to be. Heck, they canceled like 1,500 flights over last weekend, right? So there's a multitude of things going on in our market and our economy, not only here domestically, but also globally, that really when you start looking at it, we're already kind of we're already underperforming output, which is a recession anyway, right? So we already know that there's supply chain issues. We know that we can't get more chips for cars. We know that we have a massive, it's probably a similar demand for oil, but then we have a less supply because now we're not going to include Russia's crude oil, right? So you have a lot of these forces just pushing up against it, and it doesn't matter, right? So these are lessons, some somewhat painful lessons learned from 2008. So kind of to give some of the stats, there was about 8 million people that were unemployed. Massive company, Lehman Brothers, if you didn't know who they were, kind of on the investment analysis side and also on the investment side, delved pretty heavily into derivatives. And so in the midst of that though, there was many companies that found themselves overexposed and completely out of business. So I was reading one of the articles, and the CFO at the time at Lehman Brothers was like, don't worry everybody, we're in a good place. And literally the next day, everybody's being fired and everybody's being let go. And literally it felt like overnight, but it's probably within 48 hours, the company was gone. About 4,500, I think there's somewhere close to around $1 trillion or some odd dollars that was just vanished based on the Great Recession. So in the midst of this, there was massive layoffs. Companies 50 or more were laying people off. I knew when I was talking to a friend of mine, he was going to law school at Marquette University, top tier law school in the country. When you would graduate prior to 2008, your likelihood of having a job was at 98%. When he was graduating that year, it was as low as 36%. So it completely plummeted. His income, by the way, as an attorney, very common, right? Law school at Marquette University was somewhere close around $180,000 during that time, all 3 years. And when he graduated, his starting salary was $36,000. This is someone with a law degree. And there was a lot of people in that profession of law that found themselves in the exact same place. And he felt lucky. He actually had a job that was going to pay him, I think, like $40,000 or so. So he felt lucky compared to a lot of his classmates. When they were looking at graduating, they had nothing on the horizon. Okay? And so one of the interesting things about our career and our business is that insurance is built for tough times. That's what it's designed for, right? We're designed for risk. This is where we play. And so right now you have a ton of risk. You have a ton of volatility in the market on the investment side. You have a lot of concern with companies looking at where they are financially. And so they want to do something about that. So the big thing about insurance, why it's a great opportunity, is on the business side, they're going to be open to costs, to have a look at the analysis, right? Or one of our words that we use heavily is they're going to be open to an audit. Hey, I know you've been working with the same person over and over and over, and they haven't changed anything. Does it make sense to audit what is going on in your commercial general liability? Now, it's not to be able to save you money. Understand that. This is not a Geico approach. This is not a progressive approach. Because if we go on the premise of always saving someone money, we're going to be replaced by someone always saving money. So remember, the focus is value. It's got to be able to then be shown what is the actual cost. So when those two things align, if I can see the value for what I'm going to pay for that vehicle, right? So all of us have a vehicle. It's got 4 wheels, and it goes from point A to point B. Okay? That's how it functions. But each of us has a different label on our car. And looking over here, there's a Mercedes-Benz dealership, right? That the wagon, what is the G? What's that? The G-Ride. The G-Ride. It's like the G300 or whatever. They don't make it anymore, but it's like a $200,000 to $300,000 car.
And it's right.
Okay, that's right. It does the exact same thing. 4 wheels takes you from A to B. So understand that people, when they see value, they will pay for the cost. So if you see yourself of value, then you can understand there comes at a cost for certain things. Now, yes, to a certain extent, does that mean you're going to be able to get people to overpay for premium? Maybe not. But there's really good reasons why people will pay an attorney $400 an hour versus the person for $100 an hour, because they're getting a perceived value of cost. Okay? Understand where that plays a role. So when it comes on the business side, they're going to be open to an audit. On the personal family side, people as well are going to be open to an audit. I'm spending $50,000 in my life insurance portfolio. Should I audit what I'm doing, right? I'm looking at my personal life. Unfortunately, the average American lives check to check. That's just a concerning notion of kind of where we are as a nation from a savings standpoint. I just saw recently that credit card balances are at an all-time high again. Prior to the pandemic, a lot of people were using their stimulus checks last year to actually pay down debt, but now they find themselves kind of in the exact same space because of the high cost of goods, groceries, gas, etc. So on this, some people are going to have a conversation and be open to an audit of where they are financially. So this gives us a huge opportunity. So how does one make themselves recession-proof? How can you always be advancing? That's what I want to dive into, because the strategies not only can work now, but they can work into the future. So understand that each of us has the proactive opportunity to drive where we want to go. Now, we could watch MSNBC, Fox News, with Bloomberg, and we can read all and hear all about the analysts talking about what's happening. The reality is that a recession is always a lagging indicator. In other words, we've already lived through a quarter of down output, right? Reduced output. and we do that 2 quarters in a row, I don't need somebody to tell me, oh, there was a recession just based on metrics. We already lived it, right? You can read a lot of the tech companies out there are laying people off. I think Amazon said they had about 20 to 30% unused real estate out there in the commercial space. They buy all the real estate way in advance, years in advance, and so they didn't anticipate a pandemic, which most people didn't when it came to their commercial buy. And so you see even large companies of that mass are going to have a difficulty. Now, I remember 2008 was the first time I had heard about kitchen cabinet stocks. So the reason why I bring this up is because there are organizations, institutions, that they literally kill it in these down markets. Think of it like General Mills, which is like your cereals, your oatmeals, your Johnson & Johnson's. People still buy toothpaste, even though there's a recession. There's a Procter & Gamble. There's a variety of different companies that exist within our household that we're going to still purchase and use their business. I saw like Walmart's up. I think actually the Dow Jones, I think Walmart was the only one that was up at the end of yesterday. So when it comes to these things, understand that in a downturn in the economy, there's always going to be some winners and there will be some losers. They can come from the exact same industry, but how they react right now will determine how successful they are in the future. And the same thing applies to our business. So the nice thing is that being in our business during good times and bad times is that we have the opportunity to control where we decide to spend our attention. And so that is extremely different, right? So if you say, for example, a lot of people might not know this, but back in 2013, if you were in oil and energy, when oil went down, there was a small micro recession here in Houston because oil price, the barrel of oil went down to about $60 a barrel, and most of the models were based on $80 a barrel. So they had to lay off a bunch of people. And so here in Houston, there was a little tiny recession. There was a bunch of banks that was exposed. From the Houston area, Whitney Bank almost is barely a bank that even is in existence because they had so much exposure in oil and energy. And so a lot of banks here locally and credit unions have now revamped how much exposure they have in oil and gas and energy because of that exposure. So understand that there's always going to be players in different industries, and it's going to depend. I would say right now with where we are, I'd say Houston is going to be pretty isolated from a recession. A lot of what we do isn't based on finances. We're based on oil, we're based on gas, we're based on electricity and energy. We should be in a great place. At the same time, there's a huge amount of manufacturing and a big chunk of exports and imports that come out of the Port of Houston, and of course our great relationship with Mexico to our south. So Houston overall should be faring pretty well. So ultimately, I want to be able to just share this with you, and I know a lot of you are visually minded, so I'm going to share this with you. Hold on one second. But I'll read it out just because kind of can share that with you. Okay, here we go. All right, so it's called the will to win. So if you want anything bad enough to go out and fight for it, work day and night for it, give up all your time and your peace and your sleep for it, if only the desire of it makes you quite mad enough never to tire of it, makes you hold all things tawdry and cheap for it, if life seems all empty and useless without it, and all you scheme and dream is about it, if you'll gladly sweat for it, fret for it, plan for it, lose all your terror of God or man for it, if you simply go after the thing that you want with all your capacity, strength, and sagacity, faith, hope, and confidence, stern pertinacity, if neither cold, poverty, famish, and gaunt, nor sickness nor pain of body or brain can turn you away from the thing that you want, if dogged and grim you besiege and beset it, you'll get it. Now the biggest question to ask ourselves in this is, what is your it? What do you want? For you, is there a desire within you to get more? So I find that for a lot of people, they've convinced themselves that I want to be in this particular industry. They might even convince the spouse that, hey, I want to be in this industry. And then you have to look at your activity. Does it align to where you want to go? Now, I'm not saying you need to change your routine. You need to wake up at 3 in the morning. You need to, do this 24/7. If you audit your day, how many hours are you putting into what's expected to be successful in this business? Now, there's very few people I've ever ran into that didn't have just a crazy network or a crazy personality of charisma that could do this part-time and actually have full-time income. Full-time effort and attention will get you full-time results. Very few times are you going to get the latter, right? So all the talent in the world cannot make up for hard work. So in this concept of always advancing, where this is going to really hit home is from this concept of winners keep score. So if you and I were to be out there on a playground and we watch kids, let's say they're playing basketball, right? And they're just shooting around. No one's keeping score. And I walked to them and I said, hey kids, let's do this. Why don't you guys start playing a game, split it up, 5-on-5, and I'll keep score. And what you'll find is the intensity of every single person has now changed. They're now actually, because when you're just shooting around, you're just throwing it up, someone's catching it, they're passing it around. But now all of a sudden, the look on the face, the intensity, the sweat is going to be there. You add on top of it now, I'm going to pay the winner. Now all of a sudden, those 5-on-5 kids are going to play a much different game. And I find the same thing to be the case in our world. And so what does winning So keeping score. So this is a massive lesson that was learned, is that in the midst of this, I had a business. I just wrote them the year before. We were doing $45,000 of premium into some permanent policies for the husband and the wife, the two owners of the business, and they had 28 employees or 26 employees. And later over the next year, we completely dismantled that business down to 2 employees. It was rough, okay? So there was a big amount of activity, right? So in the midst of this, your activity will have to increase. I'm not saying your hours have to increase, I'm saying your activity has to increase. So when I was running, I'd run 15 meetings out of 20 every single week, okay? That was my metric. So I knew that if I had 20 on the book, I would keep 15. I knew that someone was getting delayed, someone's kid was get sick, and then someone would actually forget to kind of confirm. Lesson learned, I confirmed meetings. Or I send just reminders via Outlook. So I know though, in order to get my 20, I needed to then dial the phone more. Now, it wasn't a crazy amount of difference. Typically, I was at around 40 every single day. And so that might have gone up to 60 some days. Also, I would typically get 4 referrals, and I increased that to 5 referrals every single day. Okay? So it wasn't a big number of difference, but it went from 1 a day equals 5 per week. 1 per day equals 5 per week. And if I worked, let's just, for simple math, 50 weeks in that year, I would get 250 more referrals for that year. So again, this is, David had brought up this book, Atomic Habits. It's that 1% better than I was the previous week, right? So again, going back to the dials, if I did 40, and again, right now I would keep that at 40 outreaches, right? 40 text, or not 40 text messages, but that would be 40. It could be emails, text messages, DMs, calls. And you could do, 20 calls, 30 DMs, or not 30, that's too much math, that's 50. But all of these equal 40, okay? There's a multitude of ways for us to connect with people ongoing. So on this premise, you want to be able to then have a look. I would say for the average person, when I look at their activity is part-time, okay? So if I say I need you to be keeping 10 appointments every single week, I know that the average person, when their results are low, that means I know that they're below this. So just simple math, right? 8 to 10 is an 80%, okay, or higher. 6 to 7, or gosh, put it here. Anything below 6 is failing. So I know somebody that's running basically a part-time business in this career, and you add on top of it that things are going to get tighter. I know that 6 will literally leave people out of the business. They will just not be able to survive because you don't have enough conversations, you don't have enough clients in order to get you over this hump. So just beware of running less than this on a full week. Now, for example, you might have a conference like David did the other day where he's out for 2 days. So his meeting though is all about getting quantity of this, and then his next week will be just filled with constantly contacting people. If you haven't already, book those meetings, right? Which you already have. So hold on 1 second. Cody in the room. All right, so in this, again, increased activity doesn't mean more time in a seat, doesn't mean more time that has to be focused in on. What it does mean though is that you're going to look at your activity when winners keep score, and it's going to change. So let me just show you what this means. So in my first year, by the way, how do I know these stats? Is because I had to keep every single stat. Where I was trained, John can attest to this, it was called a blue book. And inside the blue book was your dials, your reaches, your contacts, and then the appointments that you made, the appointments that you kept, the business that you submitted, how many referrals that you got, and then what were the results of those referrals. How many fact finders you kept, how many case opens, how many closes. Everything was literally on a spreadsheet. And I put this into Excel. And for over 5 years, I kept track of everything I was doing on the front end. So my first year, I focused heavily in on the dials because I can control that. I can't control who picks up. Just like in an email, I can't control who responds back. But I can definitely control how many emails I'm blasting out there. By the way, I think I saw Dan's was at 1,100 emails sent from his HubSpot connections in the last 30 days. So that's what I focused in on because I could control that on a daily basis. Okay? I couldn't control what someone was going to do. My second year though, when I looked at it, okay, well, I don't need to focus so much on dials because I have traction, I have skill set there. What I focused in on though was appointments kept. So in other words, I looked at, okay, how many appointments do I have to have? Now, they said you needed to have 25 in order to keep 15. For me, I looked at my numbers, and if I had 20, I would keep 15. So I used my numbers, okay? And again, that's the value of keeping your own stats. It's like Moneyball in baseball, okay? Then you look at my third year, I was focused on discovery meetings. Because those were the meetings that I enjoyed the most. I loved meeting new people. I loved hearing their story, what they wanted, how they, where I can help them get to where they wanted to go. And I noticed whether somebody bought or not, I knew that I would earn about $5,000 every time I sat down with somebody in that first initial conversation, okay? And again, I was brand new, so I didn't have a huge client book. My fourth year, so This one, I knew that I made about $7.31 per dial when I added up my commissions and divided by the dials for the year. I knew that here I would earn about 2,000, it was about 400 or so of commission for every meeting I kept, whether they bought or not, whether it was a COI meeting or whether it was a client meeting. My discovery meetings, again, I noticed that it was around 5,000 and like $3 or something for every, I call them a fact finder, right? Where they knew that I was coming in, asking about their personal finances and where they wanted to go. My fourth year, I focused on new clients. So I knew that new clients were really the bloodline of my business, and I would get about, and we call them checkbooks because if I got like a husband and a wife, it's still one checkbook. I got one business, it's one checkbook, right? But I knew that I would earn about $10,000 per checkbook, okay? So whether that's a household or a family. My fifth year, that's where it started really focusing in on my niche. So it was all about who I was sitting across from. And so that's really where it became much more, at that point I noticed that I was working primarily with MDs. And so the focus was then referrals to MDs. And I knew that, I think statistically speaking, it was around 12,000 per referral of an MD, okay? Now I still took referrals to other people, but that's really where I kept my metrics and my focus, my attention. I still have to keep track though of the dials, the appointments kept, the discovery meetings, the cases opens, the closes, but I focus my time and attention on how I can move it. And you're gonna find the same thing depending on where you are in the business. So as you look at your activity, you wanna be able to see what can I really hone in on that I can control. Because the one thing that you don't wanna focus on is just sales. Sales is a result. Activity is completely, I control that, right? So I'm one that decides to punch out at the end of the day and say, you know what? I have enough activity, or I don't, and I'm okay with that. So for example, if my goal was to hit 40 dials for the day, and I only made 30, so I didn't have the 10. I did 75% of the job. It's my choice whether I decide to pack up and go home. But the reality for most people is they accept that approach. They accept mediocre or subpar activity, thinking that, oh, I'll make it up later. It's okay. I got to get home because it's 5 o'clock and I want to get ahead of traffic, so it'll be good. Or I'm going to make those $10 on the way home. In reality, what happens is I get a phone call from my bro, and we end up talking about the U.S. Open the entire ride home, and I didn't make my $10. But it's okay. I'll make 50 the next day. The next day comes, and I don't make the 50, right? So we are the own auditors of that activity. If you don't audit your own activity, then remember, garbage in is garbage out. Part-time results came from part-time activity. Poor or subpar results came from poor or subpar activity. And so each of us can have a look at what we're doing on a daily basis to really drive this number. So in this, I want to be able to challenge you to identify what it is that you're going to focus on that you can control. What will you control? So that's challenge number one. What will you control? Okay, so write that down. I'm going to write that in the chat. Okay. Okay, so I got this in video, so I'm not gonna take a photo of this. So that's the first thing that was learned in this recession, is that I could control what was gonna happen. Now it was difficult. I'm not gonna sugarcoat it. It was difficult having to make a ton of phone calls for unwrapping that 401k. Those 26 employees that had a good chunk of them had disability, life insurance, my own buddies' policies for the husband and wife, had to unravel those as well. And those were painful experiences after we had kind of put that into place about a year and a half in. Luckily, there wasn't any massive chargebacks. So after we look at activity, so what I found in this is a couple of things. How many of you are familiar with the story of the Titanic? What happened to the Titanic? How did it sink? Hit an iceberg.
It started turning too late.
And what was the issue? Because I thought it was like super strong, right? It was meant to be.
It was deemed unsinkable.
Right. It was deemed unsinkable. What was the issue?
They overpromised and underdelivered.
Candy, what were you gonna say?
I'm sorry, I didn't hear your question.
The Titanic. Why did it sink? Besides, of course, hitting the iceberg.
Why did the Titanic sink? I mean, I know why the Titanic sunk. Wasn't no iceberg or a turn late.
Oh, what were you gonna say?
I was gonna say because who was it? The captain or somebody said that not even God could sink it. So
Yeah.
there you go.
Pride,
And I
right?
was like, I'm gonna show you.
So I love that, Candy. So what I'm gonna call this is just a weak spot, right? And so we can identify it as an iceberg. And remember, how much of an iceberg is actually above water? Oh, only like 10 to 20%, right? Kind of depending on, of course, the buoyancy, right? The other one is turn too late. And then I'll call this pride, okay? Right? Me over God or whatever that is. So, or any other spiritual advisor, right? Turn too late, I'm gonna say procrastinate. So in this thought process, I found the same thing to be true in this business. So I actually came up with what I called Titanic entrepreneurs. So I came up with these different things that I saw my other counterparts in the business do that literally annihilated them out of the business. Okay, so one was a guy that literally vacationed himself out of the business. So he didn't plan for his vacations, but what would happen is his buddies would say, "Hey buddy, you want to go golfing?" And he would go golfing, okay? And it was like, oh, you know, to a certain extent, golf can be business, but at the same time, golf can just be golf, right? And that's what it came for him. The next one was, or is I need to go on this 3-day weekend, or, you know, all of us have different, we could have significant others in our lives, and so we could end up part-timing our weeks to be able to have our personal life. So you have to audit what that means to you. The average person, when they're really kind of honed in, give themselves about 3 to 5 weeks worth of vacation, okay? So when you think about that, 3 to 5 weeks of vacation, let's just use the number 4. That means every quarter, I'm off for 5 days. But do I plan for that? The average person doesn't. Now, if I am new in my career, so I'm 17 years into the business, I give myself 3 to 4 weeks of vacation, right? But it's gonna be different for, let's say, I'm Millie and I just started in the business, because you know, when you're new to the career and you're new to any business, let's say ExxonMobil or Shell, you're gonna get 2 weeks of vacation. It's over time you earn the 3rd and you earn the 4th. The struggle could be, though, is that I want the benefits of somebody that's been doing it for 15 or 20 years and has the network of 15 or 20 years, but I'm gonna try to do it my first year. That's where it becomes an Achilles heel. or in this case, a Titanic issue. The next one that I saw was big case-itis, okay? And what I mean by this is they didn't have any activity beyond chasing big cases. So I knew this guy, and he would write about 100,000 of business, one case once a year. And it almost always came in the fourth quarter. So he basically would only babysit this one case for 9 months. It would pay out, but then on the personal side, he would be floating himself on credit cards in order to get himself through the lean times. So what I would say is use this concept as a yin and a yang. You want to chase big cases, but you don't want that to be at your detriment, okay? So you have to do big cases plus the activity. You can't neglect the activity. The next one that I found was, just told you some got on me. Is I saw people that they didn't actually take advantage of the opportunity and get more knowledgeable. They thought that whatever I learned in the previous years was going to sustain me. What that actually left them was exposed that when they met higher caliber people, they weren't able to actually add value. Now I will tell you this, I don't think this is actually true. We call this that when ostriches get scared, they put their head in the sand. I don't think that's actually scientifically true. I think but again, I'm not an ostrich owner. But it's this idea of the ostrich mindset is they want to be able to forget it, okay? They don't want to know that it exists, so they ignore their score, okay? So winners keep score, losers don't want to keep score. I don't want to track how many people I'm meeting a week because it's going to be able to then point out that I'm below average, right? I don't want to be able to know how I did on the SAT because it's going to then show that I might not be able to get into Texas A&M, right? Texas A&M takes the SATs or the ACTs?
They do both.
They do both. Okay, obviously.
The ACT has a little bit more leverage now.
Okay. So when we don't keep score, we have that almost ostrich mentality that I'm not going to keep track of this. I'm just going to let it go. So the last one that I typically saw in this particular time period was people that were then they got distracted. So typically it was something shiny. It was their friend that said, hey dude, you should have a look at this business. It could be stem cell research. It could be investing into, this doodad or that doodad, doing a bunch of research, and you're spending time that ultimately is going to be wasted. Okay? So instead of going all in on where you are, you decide to take some of your time and focus it somewhere else. Now, it's a little different when you're on your Saturday night or your Thursday night and your evenings and you're watching Stranger Things, right? Like that, those are your personal choices, right? That's how you're gonna be able to do what you need to do. And so when you look at how you spend your time, it's how you're spending it during the daytime, right? So I have no problems if you're, let me just rephrase this. For me, you'll probably never see me on TikTok during the daytime. Actually, you'll never see me on TikTok because I think I uninstalled that thing. You'll see me on LinkedIn during the day, but I'm typically not going to be reading an article during my daytime hours. Reading the news or what's going on for me is either bathroom time or it's after hours. right? Now, if I'm having lunch, I might be watching MSNBC to see what's going on across the ticker, but I'm not going to spend my time reading articles when I need to be focused in on the activity that's going to drive it. So for me, I got really, really specific with what was going to drive my success. And so for my activity, and I want to encourage you again, find out what it is and then stay completely true to it. So for me, it was outreach. So that was going to be calls and emails. I could control that. Number 2 was my mindset. I made sure that I was going to always bring positivity to what was going on. Because for those of you that aren't familiar, what was happening in that during that time period was everyone was talking about the Great Recession. There was millions of homes that were foreclosed during that time. There was these crazy things called derivatives that were being completely undone. There was many businesses that went hand in hand and asked the federal government for money, right? That was crazy. To me, it had never been done before, right? Here was the CEO of GM, now, mistake of his, flew down in his private jet. The next time they took a bus, which I thought was just stupid. But nonetheless, they went there to basically Barack Obama and said, hey, the President of the United States, we need money or we're going to have to lay off all these people. The reality is that GM, you're a crappy company to begin with. You shouldn't let you go to begin with. But nonetheless, I digress. And there was a lot of businesses here, AIG, same thing, needed money from the Federal Reserve in order to stay afloat, right? They couldn't find a bank, they couldn't find a credit union, they couldn't find any kind of wealthy individual to help them be where they were. That's the state of the economy. And so if I allowed myself to read all the layoffs that were going on, all the people that were underemployed and unemployed, and the difficulty that people were going through, that could completely change my mindset, and I could see the world as a recession instead of seeing it as what I could control. Number 3 is I leveled up, okay? During that time, I increased my knowledge. So I got my Series 6 and 63. I got involved with an association for insurance and financial advisors. I was on a board of a local school. I volunteered my time as a youth leader at my local church. I got extremely focused on making sure that I was developing myself, okay? And that's exactly what I would have you hone in on for you, is what does that development look like? What is that piece? So that'll be the second challenge. Is number 2 is so for some of you, that might be getting your life license or your P&C license. For those others of you, let me write this in the chat. And then lastly, number 4, I focused in on my calendar of activity, right? So I put down appointment slots. I put down time. I put down, 5, I got a coach. I probably haven't coached before, but let's just put it in there just because it happened probably around the same time. Agents, time to phone. So that's appointments. Time to phone, time to learn. Late nights. So I was telling the team last week in training is when I first started out, my first year in the business, I ran 3 nights a week, okay? Monday, Wednesday, Thursday. And then my second year, I ran 2 nights, Mondays and Tuesdays. My third year, I ran 1 night, Mondays, And then my 4th year, I ran one night on Tuesdays every other week. And then by my 5th year, I was only running one night kind of every 3 weeks or so. They would get pretty booked up. And then I ran the occasional Saturday my first 3 years in the business. So again, when this, for me, from an activity standpoint, I added the Saturdays in during the Great Recession because it was an opportunity for me to be able to grab more people. So for me, that was like bonus time. So even though I had my 15 appointments that I kept Monday to Friday, Saturday to me was a bonus time. So I told people when they met me on Saturday, they would get casual Sherm. So there's many times my son, who's now 17, he'd come in at 3 years old, his brother was 1, I'd have a bunch of fruit snacks, got some videos showing on in the conference room, some DVDs, old school we used to use DVDs, and then I would then be working on my cases. I'd be running the analysis, I'd be looking at basically prepping for the week, because I wanted to make sure that when I came in Monday of the next week, I was ready to go. And if my client, and if somebody wanted to meet me, a potential client, I told them they're going to see me casual Sherm. I was going to come in shorts and a t-shirt. That was going to be a nice pair of shorts and a t-shirt. It wasn't going to be like gym clothes, but they knew that. And so for me, it was an opportunity for me to be able to have a look at how I was spending my time and make sure that I controlled it. And then finally is I made sure that I was checking in with someone on a weekly basis. I needed that accountability. So for some people, they can get that accountability through me. Other people can get that accountability through their significant other. Like, this is what I'm working on. But for each of us, that's what we need. We need accountability to get to where we want to go, and we can't allow ourselves any excuses, because excuses are like armpits or buttholes. Everyone has them, and they all stink. The sad thing is, at the moment that you and I start believing those excuses of why we can't execute, we do that at our own excuse me. We do that at our own demise. All right, so kind of rewind here a little bit. All right, so we start looking at ways that you can be able to focus in on its outreach, mindset. Make sure that I want you to be educated. I just don't want you to be inundated, right? Inundated to me is that David comes in and goes, Sherm, did you read the article about how we're going to be going into this recession for the next 18 months? I'm going to say, no, I didn't, because I wouldn't even read that stupid article. I don't know, maybe I would. I want to know what's going on, but at the same time, I don't want to be brainwashed. Next one is, what can I focus on doing to level myself up? Whether that's my physical, my spiritual, my psychological, my mental, right? Like my knowledge, my network in the industry. I'm going to do all that I can. Number 4 and number 5 is having a look at your auditing your day and your week. What is your calendar saying about you, and are you driving it to where it needs to go? And then finally is, are you accountable to your activity, right? And so you and I in our coaching sessions are getting much more detailed in what's going on, right? My agenda is basically, give me the stats, issued, submitted, what's your HubSpot deals. Send those to me every single week, because if I don't have them, then I get grilled. I get grilled by Dan. You can imagine how those conversations are when I don't have stats from you guys. So want to be able to make sure that I'm in control, I'm being proactive to drive where I would need to go. And that's really where you want to come at from this this always advancing mindset. The next part in this, to finally kind of keep it all together, is when I saw some of these weaknesses people were having that took them out of the business, is that I did whatever I could to avoid it. So when it comes to like vacation, I plan out my vacation ahead of time, right? So even this year, right? So I know I'm not on vacation for June, July, August. My next vacation, well, maybe I'll take a little micro one, maybe like a 3-day, 2-night one here in July, at the end of it. And then it won't be until basically Thanksgiving and Christmas. And that's how I stack it up. So I know that for me, I plan it ahead of time. Big case itis, I want to make sure that I match the activity with my big cases, right? So this will help you remove that high level of emotion, it'll bring it down because you have high level of activity. When I'm meeting with 10 people a week, I don't care who says yes. I know that statistically speaking, when I'm meeting with 10 people, someone's gonna say yes and someone's gonna say no. That is the law of statistics, right? Or really the law of people. Then I looked at, okay, what could I be doing to be able to increase my knowledge during this particular time period? Could it be jumping in on some Kaplan courses or some CE, and not just doing CE just to do CE, choosing continuing education courses that's gonna help me get better. Next one is, how am I keeping score? How am I not ignoring the realities in my day? So it's the whole thing about holding the mirror up to yourself. And I would do that every day. I would post my numbers and I would plan for the next day, call it posting and planning. And then finally is, I would have a look at what was keeping me away. So each of us have different distractions that can be completely unhealthy. So know what that is for each of you, and it's totally personal, right? So David might go, hey, I know 2 drinks is good for me. The 4th, probably not so much. It's probably taking me down the other side, right? For another person, it might be, hey, it's that one episode of Breaking Bad's good. 2's okay. 3, now I've gone into the binge mode, right? And now all of a sudden it's 2, 3 in the morning. I'm gonna find myself not in a good place. Or it could be, hey, I know people have admitted this. Some of the youth that I work with in my Bible study is that they'll get stuck in these like TikTok, I just call it like a downward spiral, but death spiral. But they'll end up watching like TikTok for like 2 hours, and they'll go, "What the heck just happened to my night?" Right? I literally just ended up consuming a ton of people doing different dances or comedy. It's fun. It's just that, just like kind of like Netflix, 1 video, 2 videos is good. 3 to 4, now we're in a bad spot, right? So understand and look out for your own weaknesses, right? If we think about like the Titanic entrepreneur, are there weak spots in your situation that might get to where you want to go? The last one is that I want to hone in on is speed, okay? Urgency. This one to me is also being relentless. So this one is about where you are, looking at what you're doing. Are you waiting for permission? So for example, David's got a list of contacts. He has someone to call, but he's fearful of calling this person because he's not prepared yet. He's afraid of what they'll say. And so he's waiting. Waiting to me can be at our own detriment. He waits, somebody else decides to capture, right? Because if this is someone that we think we should call on, so does probably somebody else there in the marketplace, somebody else that might run into them. Being relentless is just being persistent to get to where you want to go. Not allowing obstacles to get in your way. I think a lot of obstacles in our business can be fear-driven. Fear-driven is, so if I'm fearful of calling on this person because I might not be knowledgeable enough, that fear is because I should probably be studying. So instead of going home and turning on the old Netflix or the Disney, right, or whatever I can be watching, I should be focused in on learning more about Bitcoin, or I should be learning more about buy-sell agreements, about cross-purchase, right? I should be focused in on that area. The other one that I find this to be is, if it's not fear-based, then it's person-based. So I'm not urgent because I don't want to shoot all my opportunities on all those 100 people too early. I'm not prepared yet, I'm not where I need to go. The reality is, you are prepared enough as a team. right? So P and C, commercial, I don't need to be the smartest person in the room. I could leverage Casey, I could leverage Janae, right? When it comes to personal lines, I don't have to be super knowledgeable. I could use you, I could use Jason, I could use Rolly, right? I could use Tia. There's a multitude of people that really understand the personal lines, so I don't have to be the expert. And so when we hold ourselves back because we're trying to do it all on our own, we do that at our own detriment. Remember the old African proverb, if I want to go fast, I go alone. If I want to go far, I go together. And so here, I want you to go fast and I want you to go far. So in other words, I want you to go with the team to go far, but then I also want you to do certain things by yourself so you can go fast. Now, remember, I work at your disposal. Dan works at your disposal, right? Now, of course, he's got a calendar. I have a calendar. But you book the time. We will do whatever we can to make sure that we're there to help you close business. I am directly evaluated on how each of you do. Not one of you. Every single one of you individually. Of course, it rolls up collectively. But then every single person I'm judged by Dan is, what are you doing to help David grow? What are you helping to do with Millie to help her grow? What are you doing to help out Jason, John, everybody else, right? And that's the harsh reality, is that for me, in this, is that I have to do everything that I can to help you guys get to where you want to go. And that is my role. That's what I'm evaluated on. That's how I see my value in the team. Yes, it's to bring people on, but unless every single one of you is successful with where you want to go, then we're not yet where we need to be. And that's exactly what I want to be able to make sure that we hone in on. So with that is always advancing, everybody. Have a great day, and we'll talk to you soon. Peace out.